Mr. Beast is going to get away with everything. Let me explain how. Dogpack 404 essentially became the face of the allegations with his credibility as a former employee putting people's faith into him. And to his credit, he brought to light some very damning allegations about exploiting child psychology, Jake the Viking's brother-in-law, and LaKoya Hill. But he made one mistake that will save Mr. Beast completely. In his recent video, he made allegations that James Warren, the secret CEO...
There's allegedly domestic violence charges that were filed against him. And I say allegedly because it turns out there's a lot of people in North Carolina named James Warren.
It came back and he was wrong. The charges are not for DV. I don't know what they're for, but this one careless mistake shatters his credibility.
Behind the scenes, just submitting freedom of information requests and just helping me out a lot in general.
He had the possibility of verifying the information and chose not to. Regardless of the reason, he's showing his bias, and this actually leads to an exposed video on Dogpack. He had a Reddit account where he posted most of the allegations ahead of time, but then begged Mr. Beast for a job, and then he got it. He was supposed to bring insight on kids content and how it thrives. He was hired to hack kids' brains basically. So the exploiting child psychology argument falls flat when you realize he was hired to manipulate them. He was fired after 3 weeks for forcing the company to buy a MetaQuest 3. Mind you, he was an intern at this time. And after they fired him, he begged for his job for an hour in a recorded Zoom call, then asked if he could ever rejoin in the future. This all shows that Dogpack is just a disgruntled employee, LARPing as a journalist. Most of the Mr. Beast allegations aren't about him specifically. They're about him having a bad judge of character and reckless mismanagement. But he's shown that Jimmy is not the CEO. He's the manager. He's just the talent. Mind you, he's still got executive control over the company. But it would be easy and probably justified of him to shift the blame about most of the mismanagement allegations. Now with the Chris Tyson and Lolly stuff, this seems harder to get out of, but you gotta remember, this was years ago. Shadman was cool with half the internet. He wasn't some sleazy guy hiding under a rock that no one knew about. He had lots of friends and lots of fans. So yeah, Jimmy knew that Chris was a fan of a popular artist, but to what extent we don't know. Who would believe that their best friend of forever was capable of something like that? And to clarify, Chris never, as far as we all know, groomed anybody. There are 2 cases that we are publicly aware of where he had an inappropriate friendship with teenagers, the leaked Discord server and a girl on Snapchat that sent him high heel. It's essentially the same case as Dr. Disrespect, which isn't in defense of Chris, but it is an important fact to lay out. As for the Discord server, yes, Jimmy was in it, but there were years worth of logs and we only got one snapshot of Jimmy in the chat making a joke. We don't know how much he knows. It would still be negligent on his part, but not unreasonable to assume his ignorance. Jimmy has very openly discussed how he spent every free moment thinking about YouTube, video analytics, video making, that stuff. A man that obsessed doesn't really care about anything else. The thing about LaKoya Hill is that we're operating under the assumption of guilt, right? It's very possible that the investigation turned up and said he's innocent, and that's why they brought him back. We don't know what happened, we don't know who's the victim, we don't know anything about this case. It's still a terrible look, but there are explanations for why Jimmy could have done that. The only real allegation that hits Mr. Beast is him hiring Delaware. Mr. Beast knowingly hired a registered offender to manage his children's entertainment company. To clarify, Delaware was 16 while the girl was 11, and we don't know the full story. But that's still a disgusting age gap. If there's a reason why they hired him, it needs to be like ironclad. As for faking videos, that's not really true. He doesn't have scripts. He doesn't directly hire the contestants. He does have heavy influence over the scenarios, but he shows that clearly in the videos and he still lets the game play out. The sets are real, the challenges are real, so it's a nitpick about him editing stuff in post-production, which comes off as dishonest, but a lot of it is common practice in TV and Hollywood. There are a lot of things that Jimmy needs to respond to, but the Beast brand will survive and probably thrive.